about. It's nice to hear that there's some young folks interested in civic affairs and our processes here. So welcome to them. We will move to our Pledge of Allegiance. So if folks would mute your microphones and place your hands on your heart and follow with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, we'll move now to our adoption of the agenda, and I will look to our city clerk to see if there have been any changes to the agenda.
No changes.
No changes. Okay, so with that, I would look for a motion from the council on adoption of the agenda.
I move approval.
I'll second.
And a roll call.
Councilmember Chateau,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth,
Yes. And our regular roll call as well, please.
Mayor Ellsworth,
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Here.
Councilmember Chateau,
Here.
Hardy,
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Very good. And we'll move to our public forum. This is where members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern that are not on the agenda. Each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions by council members for clarifications may be posed and answered, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas. But in accordance with state law, no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Is there any public comment?
There is public comment. William Lyman, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Mr. Lyman, you may still be muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. So, good evening.
Good evening.
I have just a few things to say about leaf blowers. I sent a letter, which I hope you all have there. I'm just going to read what I said, which is, why are we still putting up with leaf blowers? Gas-powered leaf blowers are a public nuisance. At least 25 California cities have banned them outright. There are non-polluting, quieter alternatives to the gas-powered leaf blowers. More than half of all California air pollution comes from yard maintenance equipment. One gas-powered leaf blower emits as much pollution as 299 pickup trucks. They use 2-cycle engines, which burn gasoline combined with oil, which makes them gross polluters. Their noise is disruptive, unpleasant, and hazardous to the public and to workers. In high-density neighborhoods, the noise from leaf blowers can be nearly constant on some days. The high decibel noise causes stress, which can suppress the immune system of people exposed to it. It disrupts the sleep of night workers who have to sleep in the day. The recent California law does not ban leaf blowers, only the sale of leaf blowers after 2024. Used leaf blowers can still be purchased, as well as leaf blowers can be purchased in other states, and they can all be used indefinitely. California has not banned leaf blowers. Gas-powered leaf blowers, without a local ban, we could be putting up with gas-powered leaf blowers for decades to come. Municipal bans are simple, inexpensive, and easy to enforce. Washington, D.C. is the latest city to enact a total ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. Also, as you know, Yountville. So we can do the same in St. Helena. While we're at it, we might want to ban gas-powered hedge trimmers, which are also two-cycle and gross polluters. Beyond that, I want to say that I think Washington, D.C. has a lot of things on their agenda. They have a lot of intractable problems: crime, poverty, homelessness, budgetary problems, public education, but they still managed to pass a leaf blower ban. And I think part of the reason is because it's low-hanging fruit. All these other problems are complicated and the solutions are difficult. Gas-powered leaf blowers, it's easy. You can pass an ordinance. They're easy to enforce. People enforce them by calling in whenever they see one or hear one. Contractors can get battery-powered leaf blowers. They're expensive, but even a small contractor who only has, say, 50 customers can raise $6,000 in a year to buy new equipment just by raising his prices $10. And many of these contractors have more than 50, way more than 50 customers per month. So it's not impossible. It's not going to break anybody's bank, including for people who hire these contractors.
Thank you for the public comment. We're at the 4-minute mark. It's appreciated, and certainly we've heard these comments on the leaf blowers. A leaf blower ordinance is in our work plan, and perhaps at an upcoming meeting we can get a report on where things are with that. I'll look to the city manager to see if that's something we can report out on sometime fairly soon.
I can just tell you, it is a item that we are organizing our work plan, and yes, it is one of the city's action items this year under your climate goals. And so we're anticipating that that policy discussion will begin after April 1st, in the April to June timeframe. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll go back to our public comment. I'll look to our city clerk.
We have a hand raised. Kate, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. My name is Kate Lundquist, and I work for a Sonoma County nonprofit organization called the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. I co-direct our Water Institute program with my colleague Brock Dolman. And on behalf of a newly forming coalition, I'm here to talk to you about beaver. Yes, that's what I said, beaver, castor. In addition to creating great habitat, beaver dams hold water late into the dry season, increasing resilience to wildfire and drought. You all are fortunate in Napa County to have beaver in some of your watersheds, as they've been trapped out in many parts of their former range. This newly formed coalition is encouraging Napa County cities and the county itself to adopt policies and practices to better coexist with the beaver you have and use restoration to further expand the extent of their benefits. If you'd like to learn more about how to use beaver restoration to improve watershed health and increase Napa County's resilience to wildfire and drought, please contact Ann Wheaton. At her email address is environmentallysustainablesol@gmail.com. And with that, I thank you so much, and we hope to talk to you more about this in the future.
Thank you for the public comment. And I will look to our city clerk and see if there's additional public comment.
I'm looking, and I do see a hand raised. Just one moment. Elaine, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Good evening.
Go ahead, Elaine.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you. I want to start by saying that I second everything that Mr. Lyman said about leaf blowers and encourage you to act on this as soon as possible. And I really don't understand why we're waiting until April on that one. But my main reason for calling in tonight was to let you know that I think it is entirely inappropriate for Councilmember Hall to be using his position as a member of the City Council to carry on backroom negotiations with Pacific Union College and Adventist Health to draw water from Howell Mountain to serve and support increased development here in St. Helena. Mr. Hall, those of us who have lived here a long time are well aware of the water situation here. Climate scientists and our mayor have been warning about the potential for water insecurity throughout the region for years. St. Helena has always been particularly vulnerable. And now here you are pretending that you discovered the problem and you alone have an exciting solution. Please don't insult us. This is not a crisis you suddenly unearthed, but I can see how this crisis might be putting a damper on your thirst for additional commercial development here in St. Helena. And who stands to benefit from such development and the increasing number of customers and growing mountains of garbage that will be generated by more commercial development? Your wife's business. Are you unaware of what a bad look that is? It is arrogant, ignorant, and unethical. Just as bad, your solution involves the city buying water from one of your employers, Pacific Union College. Exactly whose interest are you looking out for here? Your constituents, your employers, or your own? And what kind of team player are you exactly to be having all these conversations with PUC and Adventist Health without even conferring with the other members of your team, which should include the mayor and the other members of the city council? Any of them might have warned you of the ethical questions your negotiations raise. Yes, that might have slowed you down, but there is a reason bureaucracy exists in government. It is to try to prevent political self-dealing such as this. If you really want to play a key role in solving the city's water crisis, I suggest that you, Councilmember Hall, educate yourself first. At the very least, get some background in geology and hydrology so you actually understand the hows and the whys of the water in Howell Mountain, so that you understand where it came from, how much there is, and how it gets replenished. It is not a strip mine. Water is life. It is not an infinite resource to be mined and depleted until it is all gone and we are all forced to move on. In the meantime, I hope the other members of the City Council will, at the very least, censure Councilmember Hall for his breach of ethics by pursuing an agreement with PUC without their knowledge for the purpose of ultimately benefiting himself, his employer, and his wife's business. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. I'll look to our city clerk and see if there's any additional public comment.
There's no other comments.
Okay, we'll close public comment. We'll move now to our reports by staff and city council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. These are reports by staff and our city council members on items of general interest. And again, brief questions for clarification may be posed and answered, and council members may request that items be placed on a future agenda, except under certain circumstances. The Brown Act prohibits any other discussion or action by the city council. So we'll look first to our staff, first to our city attorney, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. Prior to this meeting, we had a special meeting at 4:30 this afternoon to discuss two closed session items. The first being existing litigation between the city and Picasso, and the second being a conference with labor negotiators with each of our bargaining units. And there is no reportable action from either of those closed session items. And I have no further report beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to our city manager, Mr. Presswich.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to share my screen and plug some public outreach. At our last council meeting, we had a conversation about Vine Trail alignment, and direction was provided to prepare some public outreach for some additional engagement on some route options. So we have a couple of drop-in format open houses. These are going to be held outside at Napa Valley College. And these are going to be held on Saturday, February 12th from 10 a.m. That should say 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And then Wednesday, February 16th from 12 noon to 1 p.m. And then we have some virtual opportunities via Zoom, scheduling these for Thursday, February 10th from 11 to 12 noon, and also Thursday, February 10th from 5 to 6 p.m. There's going to be a press release and information on the city's website. We will publish a Zoom link later for those virtual opportunities. I just wanted to plug those tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the work in putting that outreach together. It's appreciated. We'll move now to our Finance Director, Dr. Mitz.
Nothing to report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our City Clerk,
Nothing to report.
Public Works.
Likewise, nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move through our Planning and Building.
Yes, thanks to the community for coming to the public housing workshop last Thursday. We had 29 people in attendance. We will be having a follow-up discussion with the council at a joint meeting on February 22nd. So I was really happy that we had a good turnout. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the efforts on that. We'll move now to our council members. We will begin with Councilmember Hall.
No updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you. I have a couple of things. First, I want to see if there's council support to bring a resolution declaring a climate emergency to our council in February. You'll remember this from the students who came and presented to us. It was one of the things that they asked us to do. Calistoga has done it. American Canyon's moving forward. There's conversations in Napa. I would like St. Helena for us to consider it on an agenda item in February as it fits in with our work plan. I've talked to our city manager. There's another great idea that we could have on the agenda item, our priority list of actions that has been working internally. It's already gone to the Active Transportation Sustainability Committee. I'm hoping we can see gas leaf blower ban on there, but what we need to see is what are the actions we can take. So I would love for us to have one agenda item with both this resolution on it for us to consider, as well as that priority list, if there is council support.
Certainly from me, there is.
Okay.
Very good.
All right. Sorry, there's one other thing, because I did read in the minutes that I need to report tonight, just really briefly. Mayor Ellsworth, you had asked me a couple of questions since I'm the rep for the Upper Valley Waste Management Authority, and I had said I would find that information out. So the two things that I was asked is, first, is the food waste accrued from the city going to both the Clover Flat and Whitehall Lane? And so the residential green cart, that waste, oh yes.
I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy. I want to see if he needs to interject something here. I'm sorry.
Well, I just had a question. Was that a request for council support for the resolution on a date certain?
Nope, just in February, one of the meetings that makes the most sense.
Thank you.
Okay, please continue.
Okay, great. So the residential green waste does go to Whitehall Lane. The commercial waste right now goes to Napa Recycling. That's because some work's being done to get ready at Clover Flat, so it will be there probably this summer. The second question is there, let me see, it's right here. And is any other food waste coming in from out of the region? And the answer is no.
Okay, thank you. And just to circle back on the support on the resolution, I just want to clarify that I want to defer to staff in terms of when it would come to council. So that's my support is within where staff would find the time for it. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you so much. And that recommendation comes after talking with staff.
Okay. Thank you. And so we'll move now to Councilmember Hardy.
Nothing to report.
And Vice Mayor Doring.
Nothing to report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just very briefly say a reminder that nobody wants to keep hearing, but COVID is still out there. We still need to consider the protocols, wearing the masks, washing hands, watching the distance, moving forward on vaccinations, boosters, testing, doing all we can. This variant may not have some of the more lethal aspects as we've seen before, but it's certainly disruptive, and it's been disruptive to businesses, families, et cetera. So let's all keep doing our part. I know we're tired of hearing it. It's been going on a long time, but let's just keep it up. So thank you, everybody, for your participation in that. With that, we'll move now onto our presentations and public recognitions. This is item 7.1. We're going to hear a presentation from Napa Firewise, St. Helena Fire Safe Council. Will come from the Fire Safe Council leads, Chris Warner and Jeff Farmer. I'm going to introduce our Fire Chief, Chief Sorensen, in just a moment here, but I just want to say I think we've got an amazing opportunity this year to be really proactive on community fire safety, wildfire preparation. I think we're in a position where we can all really put our shoulders to this, row together. So with that, I will pass it to our Chief Sorensen.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, good evening. I'd like to introduce Chris Warner. Chris has 33 years working in the utility industry as Chief Counsel at PG&E, as well as terms as Director of Sleepy Hollow Fire District in San Anselmo, Marin, and as Commissioner on Bay Conservation and Development Commission. Chris moved to St. Helena with his spouse, Kathy, in 2017, April. Just such a great time first time in St. Helena. They live on Grayson Avenue. Chris was asked last summer to lead St. Helena Firewise Council and to serve on board of directors of Napa Community's Firewise Foundation. Chris serves as president of local neighborhood association in San Anselmo, and he has been a practicing attorney for 45 years. And we're really lucky to have Chris on the Firewise.
All right. Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. And by the way, that last comment about being me an attorney reminds me of my dad when I graduated from law school. He said, "Another lawyer, congratulations, and let us pray." So I want to thank Chief Sorensen and thank all of you, Mayor Ellsworth and the council members, for inviting us to update you on the St. Helena Fire Safe Council. And I agree completely with the mayor that this is a great opportunity for all of us to work together to basically prevent wildfires and to prepare our community for wildfire emergencies. I do want to commend Chief Sorensen and obviously the fire and police departments. They've been very, very supportive of everything we're doing throughout St. Helena and the county in terms of wildfire prevention and preparation. As Chief said and Jeff said, I'm joined by Jeff Farmer, my co-leader in the Fire Safe Council. We've got a slide deck for you to reference, but in the interest of time, we'll be skipping some of the slides. You'll definitely have an opportunity to review those slides at your leisure. So if we could get to the second slide, Cindy, if you have that. Not quite. That's the Zoom file. Maybe the next slide after this. I'm going to first talk about who we are. I'm also going to talk about why we are so focused on wildfire prevention and preparedness. And then Jeff is going to take some time to talk about what we're going to do in 2022, our projects, our programs, and everything we can do to support wildfire prevention and preparedness. First of all, as many of you know, we are a voluntary neighbor-to-neighbor group. We are dedicated to helping our community, our residents, and our neighbors prepare for and defend themselves against wildfires. Very simple objective, obviously joined by a lot of us on this call and a lot of us throughout the community. We coordinate and collaborate with the city, with our city leaders, with St. Helena Fire and Police Departments, with, as Chief Sorensen said, the Napa Community's Firewise Foundation that leads for the whole county on a lot of wildfire prevention projects. Obviously, Napa County's wildfire experts, CAL FIRE, even the Napa flood control district and neighborhood associations and businesses. Our role is really not only to help our residents defend and prepare for wildfires, but we also perform and update a community wildfire risk evaluation, and we issue a community wildfire protection plan. These are projects we're going to be pursuing in 2022. We also basically support and administer some funding for residential defensible space projects in St. Helena. As the chief has pointed out, I know time and time again, defensible space is a very important part of defending our entire community from wildfires. And then in addition to that, we also help our access and vulnerable needs residents, particularly on the east side, but also on the west side of the city, including fixed income, low income, seniors, assisted living residents obtain support to stay safe and prepare for and evacuate during wildfire emergencies. We do coordinate and support the other fire safe councils in the county, particularly up valley. It's not unusual to have fire safe councils of neighbor to neighbor groups. We've got some very active ones around St. Helena. We've got ones in Spring Mountain, Diamond Mountain, Deer Park, Angwin, and Calistoga. So that's all part of the overall approach to really defending and preparing for wildfires. So I'd like to skip now to slides 4 to 9, if I can, Cindy. Start with 4, not this one. Let's go to the maps. I want to walk you through the maps very briefly before we get to Jeff, and go back to the previous one, if you could, Cindy, map 1. There you go. This is intended to show what we all know. St. Helena is surrounded virtually on 3 sides by highly risky vegetation and hillsides that can propagate wildfires. So that's our basic situation in St. Helena. We are not really in a great position to avoid wildfires if they occur in the hills. Go to the next slide, if you could, Cindy. So this is the east side of St. Helena. And after talking with Chief Sorensen and other wildfire experts and seeing the after action report from the glass fire that all of you on the council and the public contributed to, the east side of St. Helena includes probably nearly 1,000 residents who are vulnerable to wildfire coming down the hills, crossing over Silverado Trail, crossing over, jumping the Napa River with embers, even running down the Napa River. And we've got several parts of the community on the east side that are highly vulnerable, as you know. Vineyard Valley, most of you know, because there's been a lot of concern about what they saw during the glass fire. We can go to map 3, we can see some of the other communities as well. Cindy, next map. There you go. You also see that we've got the Hunts Grove apartments over on the northeast side there. We've got Stone Ridge, and then we've got obviously some very important infrastructure for the city with and others, Napa Valley College, Montessori School, and our new city facilities. So the east side really requires a lot of support in terms of community readiness for wildfire emergencies, but also support for projects that will create defensible space, will reduce fuel along the river and along the edges. So if we go to map 4, this is the west side. I chose this map because you'll look on the very edge on the right side. We're going to get to it, I think, in the next map. But you've got the Sylvaner Avenue area that's on the far right side, as you all know. That's a huge area, a huge subdivision of homes with over 100 families. And then you've also got Spring Street and White Sulphur Springs Road that go up to the hills. And if you look at this whole area, I think a lot of you know that during the glass fire, the fire came down the hill as well as came across from the east, and it threatened Sylvaner, threatened all the residents of Sylvaner. It also threatened a lot of the residents that are up White Sulphur Spring Road, including up to the county line and beyond the county line. So this is another focus we have as a Fire Safe Council in supporting efforts to help those residents stay safe, defend themselves, create defensible space, and support major projects that can provide fuel breaks and fuel mitigation to reduce the risk of a fire coming down the hill as well as up the hill. So if we could go to the next slide, Cindy. This shows you the north side. Many of you are familiar with the Spring Mountain Road side as we know it. And of course you have Dean York Lane, and you have the boundaries of the city that go up Spring Mountain. And I might point out that, as Chief Sorensen has been very good at showing us, is that this is a joint risk. This is not just the city. This is also where Spring Mountain Road goes up into the county area, as well as where above Dean York Lane, you've got county jurisdiction as well as city jurisdiction, a lot of shared coordination that the chief and other wildfire experts have already in place. But we also need to share, and we do share as a fire safe council, the work with other fire safe councils to get people and residents to know how to defend themselves, create defensible space, and support the projects to create fuel breaks and to create fuel mitigation. So if we go to the next slide. Now I'd like to turn it over to my co-leader, Jeff, who's going to tell you how we're going to address these risks in 2022, as well as set the stage for moving forward over the next many years as we all work together on wildfire prevention and emergency preparedness. So I'd like to turn it over to Jeff, and I'll go on mute.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Am I not on mute?
We can hear you, Jeff, yes.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Okay, I want to drill down a little bit into what we're doing short term that hopefully will produce some very quick results this fiscal year before the fire season starts. So focusing first on the east side, as Chris mentioned, the complexes on the east side that we've been in communication with are Vineyard Valley, Stonebridge Apartments, Hunts Grove, and Woodbridge. And those four complexes hold over 1,000 residents within St. Helena. So that's a big proportion of the town. We picked those basically because they are well organized. And we were inspired by the Vineyard Valley organization that they demonstrated in their evacuation drill last year. So we're basically following that model. We're working with the police department, Lieutenant Tharp, and to set up some evacuation drills for Stonebridge, Hunts Grove, and Woodbridge before hopefully April, May, in that time frame. And we're also getting them evacuation tags. Some of them have the little door hanger tags, but most people are unaware of them. So the Boy Scouts have helped us. I guess they're online here. That's great to hear. The Boy Scouts are going to be putting together these tags for us, and we will be distributing them to the affected communities in these apartment and home complexes. So that will happen within the next 2 or 3 months, and we hope to have some evacuation drills done by then. The other thing on the east side that's important to point out is the city-owned properties that need to be mitigated in some way. For instance, there's a strip of land between the river and the levee that could be a real problem for fires, and we need to look at that in terms of mitigating that, creating some dispensable space out of that. And then there's another plot of land that's just north of Vineyard Valley. It's adjacent to it and just east of Hunts Grove, and it's a city plot that's been unmanaged for a long time, and that needs to be cleaned up. It's not directly connected to anything, but should embers come from the east and land in there, then they are directly affecting those two complexes. So that's a risk we need to hopefully take care of within the next few months. Long term, on the east side, the riverbeds and the creek beds are a problem from a fire point of view. And we are very closely going to be working with the Fish and Game and the Flood Control District to see what we can do in keeping their goals in mind, but also mitigating risk for fire. So it's a balancing situation, and we need to have some, we're starting to have some discussions with those agencies to impress upon them that there are fire risks there that need to be taken care of. We're also in the long term going to be looking at outreach efforts to other communities on the east side. The 4 we picked are kind of like low-hanging fruit in that they're managed, there are managers on site that can be organized. There are a whole bunch of scattered apartments that are owned, maybe 3, 4, 5 units, 10 units, and those are going to be tougher to communicate with. Luckily, we're working also with COAD. COAD is the communities organized that are active in disaster in this county. And they and the Upper Valley Family Center are very close to a lot of these individuals, and they're going to be tremendous help in our getting communication and education to a lot of the underserved communities on the east side. So we're really thankful to have them working with us. Turning attention to the west side a little bit, we've had some meetings with individuals over there and gotten their experience from the glass fire. We're working with the fire department and learning what needs to be done in the hills there. And as Chris pointed out in the west of St. Helena slides, there are some fire roads there that need to be improved, and we're looking at helping that get done and looking for funding there. The residents would like, they're very aware of what needs to be done on their properties. And so we're basically starting an organizing effort along West Spring Street, White Sulphur Springs Road, to get the properties there turned into defensible space. The big benefit there is kind of a military term. You've heard of defense multiples, where you do one thing and it has multiple benefits down the road. Well, there's several properties there that if they were cleaned out, that are just west of Sylvania area, where there are 100 homes, more than 100 homes. If there are just a couple of properties were cleaned out west of that, it would protect tremendously the 100 homes of Sylvania and other parts of the west side. So we're looking for that multiplier effect where we clean up one area and it has a 10x or 100x factor of benefit to us. So we're looking, we have some funding sources to help out. Senator Dodd had a fundraiser last December. We have some funding from there to help some of the mitigation efforts, as well as some FEMA grants that the Firewise Council has received. And we are going to be getting part of that money that we have to respond. We have to bid for it, compete for it. And we're in the process of doing that right now. We're setting up some competition, and we're going to be submitting some requests by the end of this month or early February to get some money to help out on the west side. So hopefully shovels will start hitting the ground on some of these projects very soon, and we'll be able to come back to the council and point to some real benefits that are already happening on both the east and west side. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I might wrap it up for us, both of us, in again reinforcing that we're a volunteer organization. We are nonprofit, and we have tax exemption through the Firewise Communities Foundation, but we have to be and intend to be fully coordinated and collaborating with our wildfire experts and with Chief Sorensen, with police and fire and everybody else. We don't do this on our own. We do this all with you, with your guidance, with your advice, and with your support. And I think the one thing on this last page I want to emphasize, again, talking about the coordination and working together in the community, is that this is a long-term set of projects. This is not going to be one and done. We all know that. It's also, speaking of money, not going to be inexpensive. It's going to be expensive. We have different sources of funds with which we can support the city. We know the city and public resources are scarce, no matter what we may wish. So as a Fire Safe Council, we also are here to try to help find and support different sources of funding that you may see and need support on, or that we may be able to obtain from, the Firewise Foundation or other private donors. So we're here to help. Thank you again for inviting us. As Jeff said, we are happy to come back periodically and update you. But again, we really support everything the city has done to work in this area, and we're here to kind of continue that from a voluntary basis with our neighbors and with our residents. Thanks again, and again, thank you, Chief Sorensen, for that nice introduction and all your support.
Thank you. To the Fire Safe Council, Chris, could you give us the best contact info for the Fire Safe Council if we have community members that want to get in touch?
Yes, if you will find, and Cindy can hopefully make available, the PowerPoint presentation has both on the front slide and the end slide, Jeff's and my email and phone number. So those are the two best contacts. Very easy. Our emails are available and our phone numbers are available. We're available for anybody to contact us who would like to contact us. The more the merrier. We need volunteers. We need neighbors to help neighbors. We need everyone to pull together. And so we're welcoming anybody and everybody in the community who wants to join.
Thank you very much. And this very organized approach, I think, is going to be very helpful. So community members who want to get involved can contact the city, and they'll connect you to the Fire Safe Council, and who are also tied in with the sort of map your neighborhood efforts, the ways that we all work together, and we work together with our fire department to make sure that we're good partners with them. So thank you very much. Are there any council questions at this point? I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
I just wanted to point out, you can also find both Chris and Jeff by going to the napafirewise.org website,
Right.
and you look up St. Helena, and you have your information right there. You can send you an email and contact you easily. I just want to say thank you so much. When I have friends talk about, should they move or not from St. Helena, I say, no, we are doing more in our community to be prepared for the next fire than I see anywhere. And that's because of community members like you two stepping up and doing this work, and so many others that are happening. So thank you. You make me feel safer and better about living here. And I know how much work it takes to coordinate with all of these different groups and agencies, including our own. Thank you, Chief Sorensen and Chief Hartley, for doing all of this work. It's really, really hopeful knowing that we're facing these challenges, that you're doing all of this.
And I might point out, thank you so much, Ann. And one last comment, and I know we should let us go. This is also a county-wide effort. And you may think that, well, the people up in Deer Park and Angwin and the people over on Spring Mountain and the county area don't have anything to do with safety in St. Helena. That is just wrong. As Chief Sorensen will point out, and others, we have wildfires that know no boundaries in this county. We have an economy that is terribly vulnerable to wildfires and other disasters. So all of us in the county, up valley, down valley, really need to work together to make this a multi-year effort, and we all benefit from each other. So there really should be no, us versus them, or this neighborhood versus that neighborhood. And that's why the Fire Safe Councils are there to work with everybody.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for the presentation. Seeing no other council question or comment, really appreciate your being here, and we'll move forward from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you. And you too.
Okay, so we'll move on from that. And again, we talking about it now while the weather's cooler, we have an opportunity to work together. So if we can all put our hearts and shoulders to this sort of fire prevention, wildfire safety work now, it'll benefit us as we move forward. We'll move to our consent calendar. This is where members of the council or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purpose of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. So with that, I'll read through the numbers, and if anybody wants to pull one, you can raise a hand. Our city clerk will keep an eye on the attendees as well. So I'll move through the consent items: 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, and 9.6. I'm seeing no council hands. I'll look to our city clerk
There are no hands raised.
So very well with that, then I would entertain a motion to pass the consent calendar.
So move to pass the consent calendar.
I'll second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilor Chateau,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring,
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Yes. Okay, now we'll move to past public hearings. We had an item 10.1 that is going to be continued, so that will not be heard this evening. We'll move past old business to new business. We're at item 12.1. This is discussion and direction regarding potential ballot measure to eliminate a directly elected mayor. This is prepared by Mark Prestwich. I just want to make a note at the beginning of this discussion. In terms of the way it was agendized, there's a little bit of question about how and when motions come in for agendizing. And it's been sort of suggested that as we perhaps have a governance workshop, we can talk about protocol for that. And if what we have today is what we want to keep, or if we want to make adjustments, wanting just to make sure that we honor what we have for our staff, our city manager, in terms of making sure there's flexibility, et cetera, for when things get on the agenda, and then also making sure there's adequate space for deliberation or public comment, et cetera. So, if the recommendation was to move that type of discussion to sort of a governance workshop. And so with that, I'll pass it to Mark Prestwich.
Thank you, Mayor. The city of St. Helena has a directly elected mayor. The mayor serves a 2-year term, and the city of St. Helena is a general law city. We operate under the general laws of the state. There are charter cities in the state that have essentially their own constitution that provides, in some cases, more flexibility with respect to policy matters. But with respect to general law cities, typically mayors are either directly elected, or alternatively, they will typically rotate in other cities where a city will adopt a policy that governs how the mayor rotates. Sometimes that's based on has the individual council member served a seat as the mayor yet while they've been on the council. There's often references to seniority. If someone has been there longer, they generally would have the first opportunity to sit in that seat. But each general law city that approaches a rotating mayor like that adopts a policy generally to guide that. So at the council's request, we've brought forward a policy discussion tonight that essentially speaks to how a general law city may choose to consider an alternative to the directly elected mayor. And what the staff report presents today is essentially some background on state law and how those changes take place. If the council had an interest in placing an alternative in front of the voters, the council would need to adopt a resolution with a ballot question that essentially would ask whether the city voters would like to eliminate the directly elected mayor and instead have the 5 members of the council appoint the mayor, generally through this rotating policy that I described earlier. The question would need to be placed before the council on either the February 8th council meeting or the February 22nd council meeting in order to be placed on the ballot. And it would require a majority of voters to support this at the ballot in order for that measure to change the way that we elect our directly elected mayor. I'm going to pause there, and myself and the city attorney will be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open it up for council discussion. I had a question before we start. In terms of how something like this would come to the ballot, for me, I think it'd be important to have some of the mechanisms related to the rotation, et cetera, sort of spelled out how this works. In the staff report, it's a fairly short 2 lines, and I'm wondering, is there an ability, based on what we've seen in terms of other models, to be more specific about how that system, that rotational system might work?
Yes, it's easy for us to provide you some samples if you would like to see those of what a council policy looks like. And I've worked in the city with a rotating mayor, and essentially we had a policy that was similar to what I described.
Okay, thank you. Council comment, input at this point? Questions? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, thank you. I propose that this come to our agenda, recognizing that a number of citizens have suggested this over the last couple of years. It was something I heard about during my campaign for a seat on the city council, and it seems that this is a good time to consider it. There are a couple of themes that have come out in comments from citizens. I think some of them are reflected in the comments we've received in connection with tonight's agenda. One has been concerns over the increasing cost of mayoral elections. But another potential benefit really just comes, I think, from enhanced collaboration, of having something more of a council of equals. And for all three of those reasons, the expression of interest from members of the community, and in respect of those other concerns, I think this would be a good thing to place on the ballot. The voters decide whether or not our mayor is to be elected or appointed by the council. And in fact, it was by a ballot measure, I believe in 1972, that the city of St. Helena changed from an appointed mayor to an elected mayor. So that's a long time ago, but nevertheless, this community has some experience making that change one way, and I think this may be an opportune time to present the question to the voters again.
Thank you. Additional council comment, question? I'm seeing none. I will look to the city clerk and see if we have any public comment.
Just 1 second. I'm seeing no public comment.
Okay, we'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to the council. Any input at this point from council? I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you, Mayor Ellsworth. I think this is a good thing to do as well. I love, Councilmember Hardy, your statement, a council of equals. I like that it rotates and you can share the work. I think that it makes sense to let people vote on it.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. I also agree with Councilmember Hardy's comments. I think having 5 of us serve 4-year terms, I think would be very helpful in terms of stabilizing the decision-making for our community. We have a number of very substantial issues in front of us. And I think the more we can function like Anna has described as a team, I think the better. Obviously, we have Brown Act issues to consider, but beyond that, I think just the more consistent our council is in presiding over issues, civic issues, I think the more stability it provides to our staff. It will enable city staff to continue to operate more directly and more consistently over time, instead of feeling that they're jumping to the right or to the left or forward or backward. The more security we can provide in the direction we provide, I think the better for everybody. So I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. I just wanted to share my observation that there have been a couple of hands raised from our attendees, and currently one is still raised.
Thank you. I'll go to Councilmember Doring, and then I'll reopen the public comment since we seem to have missed some folks there. So Vice Mayor Doring.
You know, I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and I'm still not convinced about the merits of the proposal, but I do think the voters should have a chance to vote. Here are some of the concerns that I'm thinking about, and of course, the devil will be in the details as we move forward and fine tune it. One of the concerns I have is, and let me be blunt, we have a situation where people of privilege and are generally white, often male, get on the council. And so you're going to have that situation where you have three people of privilege, of means, selecting a mayor for some people who are underserved and underprivileged and don't have the same kind of access. It's a concern I have. I don't necessarily have an answer to it. I'm certainly not pointing to any one person, but it's a phenomenon that I've noticed that we have to address over time. It's something that we need to be cognizant of. There's some built-in implicit bias that leads to those kinds of situations in our community. I'm concerned about the devil in the details with respect to the period of time that a mayor would serve. I think there's, from my experience, and I've been doing this for quite some time in two different cities, there is some merit in having continuity. Certain individuals are the glue, the institutional memory that keep things moving. And if you have, especially with respect to a staff that sometimes is in flux. So I want to make sure that we at least are cognizant of that reality, that you need to have somebody kind of interacting with staff and the city manager, and it has to cross oftentimes over more than 1 year. And so I think that's not insurmountable. We can work on that. I think with respect to the costs, there's no doubt the costs of the mayoral election are well beyond what this community should be having. I would commend our council to think about other ways of getting to that issue. In particular, campaign finance reform, limitations on contributions, as other communities have done, and a voluntary agreement by those who seek this privileged office to have a cap on their expenditures. I think that's a more direct approach to dealing with the issue of costs. I think the cost of even city council races are getting to be kind of beyond what our community should be having. So those are some thoughts. I just want to make sure that we focus on the goal that we're trying to achieve, and then figure out different ways of achieving those goals. And it may be a portfolio of strategies to get to these different issues for our community. I also think we need to think about the role of the vice mayor in that. How is that vice mayor being prepped to become the mayor? What is the purpose of the vice mayor? These are all the issues that we need to be thinking about. It's such an important position to have, and ultimately our citizens are going to decide that, and that's the best democracy in action. In terms of this issue of sort of the tensions that go on and the alleged divisiveness in the mayor's race, I am not certain that I see that, and I'm actively involved in that. I don't know if that's necessarily the result of the mayor's race or particular individuals. I don't know that. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be reduced. I think in general, we should all be promoting civility and respect, and we should model that, and our citizens should be looking for people who model that. And so I don't want to take the citizens off the hook they have a responsibility to get involved in these elections and make sure that they're well represented by individuals who they can respect and have that right respect go back into the community. So those are my thoughts, more philosophical than in opposition to putting this in front of the voters, but things to think about, things I've been thinking about probably too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Doring. And so with that, seeing no other council hands at the moment, I'm going to reopen public comment so we can take some hands from the public.
All right. Pat, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. You can unmute yourself and address the council.
Thank you. I'm calling to express my support for not having an elected mayor. Like Vice Mayor Doring, I've had an interest in campaign finance reform for as many years as I can remember. And financing campaigns, either city council or the mayor's race in St. Helena, several communities in our area have set limits on how much can be raised and spent. However, as ex-Mayor Galbraith pointed out to me recently, the First Amendment precludes putting any limits on the individual who's running using their own money. And what that does is it actually eliminates the possibility for some people of the kind that might be do a good job, but they don't have the money to run. And so I think that's one of my reasons. And the other is that particularly in some of the recent elections, I found it to be more true in the mayoral than city council elections. The divisiveness, the backbiting, the spreading of rumors that were untrue it went rampant in the last election. And I don't think our city should need to have that. I would like to see our city work productively, both the citizens and the city council, and put a stop to that kind of divisiveness. Let me look at my notes here for a minute. I think that's it. I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment. I'll look to see if there's additional public comment.
There is. Norma, I'm going to allow you to speak. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you, Cindy. Hi, good evening, council member. I'm also wanted to say that I really support the idea of the mayor rotating. I do think it addresses cost, it addresses continuity, and it does address divisiveness that it's created. My question to you, Mark, that I didn't understand. So what is the public voting for? The public is just voting for the general change, or is also voting for the alternatives on how to rotate? Does everybody get an opportunity? Is it voluntarily, the role of the vice mayor, etc.? So that's just more a question of what is coming to the voters itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a brief answer to that, Mr. Prestwich?
The brief answer would be that the council would decide how to rotate, and typically that's through an adopted policy. And I did find one between comments and can share my screen if you would like later.
Okay, thank you. So we'll continue with public comment, and then maybe we can open that up after public comment. I'll look to our city clerk.
Nancy, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Very exciting to see this opportunity to vote, hopefully coming up, and I really support eliminating the elected mayor position. As for vice mayor, it sounds like Mr. Prestwich has a plan that he's going to share, but I think there doesn't need to be a vice mayor if you do a rotation. If somebody for some reason is serving as mayor and drops out of the council, the next scheduled rotating person would step in earlier than expected. That's just kind of the way I would envision it. As far as how it would work dynamically with the city staff and representing the city to the public, I think teamwork is much more effective than the leader in front of a pack. And it's a lot of work. My understanding is there's not much pay. I don't even know if there's a mayor's office. You know,
It's not.
so I just really salute the open-mindedness to think about switching things up. And another thing is some people are just better at leading a group than others. And you don't know how well somebody's going to do until they're in the saddle. And so it gives an opportunity for each council member who will be a council member because they have garnered the support of enough of the community to put them there, to demonstrate their strengths and be supported in their potential weaknesses by the other team members. So anyway, good luck. I'm looking forward. I'm pretty sure you're going to get it on the ballot, and I hope it's worded in such a way that the outcome, which I believe will pass, is going to be really healthy for the city. And thank all of you for being public servants. It's not a job I would ever be able to do. So my hat is off to each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment, and I'll look to our city clerk for additional public comment.
Elaine, you can unmute yourself and address the council.
Elaine, I
Got it.
believe you're still muted.
I got it.
There we go.
Yeah, so thank you, Paul, for your comments and your thoughtfulness. I think you made some really, really valid points. I am not opposed to this idea. In terms of the money and the money that it costs to run for office anywhere in this county, but especially in a small town like St. Helena, it's gotten pretty ridiculous. So regardless of what decision is made about the sequence of people becoming mayor or whatever, I think we really need to have some kind of citizens initiative or something that puts a cap on the amount of donations that anybody can make. And I'll talk to Paul more about the expense part of it, but and also what happens to that money if you've got a nest egg there and you're going to run again and you're still collecting money. Once you've achieved office, I don't think you need any more money to run. You should probably donate any money left over to charity or something. There's a whole bunch of things that need to be addressed in terms of campaign finance. But no one here has mentioned what recently happened at the Napa County Board of Supervisors. They have this kind of situation where there is a regular succession that's supposed to take place. And the American Canyon District Supervisor, Delia Ramos, was supposed to be the next head of the Board of Supervisors. And it was, I wasn't at the meeting, but I have heard, but they decided, they being 3 of the 5 supervisors, decided that she was not going to be a good fit. And so they decided on someone else and voted. And so she was, her turn was taken away. And there was really no good, valid reason for that. And the whole thing looked, stinks of political manipulations. So whatever we decide to do, I think we do need to take a look at what happened at the Napa County Board of Supervisors and make sure that that isn't allowed to happen here in St. Helena. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the public comment. I'll look to our city clerk to see if there's additional public comment.
There's none.
Okay, we'll close the public comment. We'll bring it back to the council. Are there any council comments, questions, or input at this point? I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Yes, thank you. A few things. With respect to our Vice Mayor's concerns about inclusivity, avoiding the problem that comes from having the elite choose one of their own. We have 5 seats and they're all elected by either system. I share concerns of many, including the Vice Mayor, about the current lack of minority representation on the council, but I really think that's a problem we solve through election. If we were to look towards a stronger, a more concrete approach, it would be, I think, through consideration of setting up a district system so that there's a district for each council seat. I'm not sure that we need to do that in St. Helena, but it's certainly something to consider if we feel a strong concern about lack of minority representation. I want to thank Nancy Durbin for her comments about the importance of teamwork and especially the concept that working as a team, we draw on the strengths of each individual and support each other with respect to our weaknesses. That is certainly the goal, and anything we can do to strengthen the culture of that kind of teamwork approach on St. Helena City Council would be a big step forward. I would like to, and then with respect to the challenges of deciding what process to use to select a mayor, should we put this resolution on the ballot and should the voters approve the change? I would suggest that that's a decision best made after the election. There's no decision to make at all if the ballot measure fails. And if the ballot measure passes, we'll all be able to come back to that question with the benefit of a whole lot more public discussion. I think we'll be much better informed about which approach best addresses the concerns of the community. So I'd like to see a resolution come back to us at the first agenda possible. I do have, before I wrap this up, I just want to go to the text. I have a question for the city attorney about the language proposed. And I know, Mr. Walsh, that you've just made a suggestion here. You say the ballot question could be written. I want to run past a slight change just to see if it makes any difference from the perspective of the city attorney. I would suggest that it read, shall the position of a directly elected mayor be eliminated so that the St. Helena City Council is composed of 5 members who select a city council member to be mayor. There's something, I think, overly weighted to my ear by using the verb determined, but that's just a personal reaction. So if you have any thoughts about that, Mr. Welsh, I'd be delighted to hear them.
I think that's a fine change.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional council comments? So, I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing my hand. I was just going to say, I think we should move forward on getting this at our next council meeting so we can move forward for the primary, because then that would have an impact for this next cycle, wouldn't it? I guess that's a question. It is, yes. So I'd be in support of that. If Vice Mayor Doring, your concerns were addressed enough to move forward to let the voters vote on it.
My concerns have not been addressed, but I'm not going to stand in the way of having the voters vote on it. I have much more to say about that, but the voters should have the opportunity to vote on it. No question about it. I'm simply raising things to think about in the community. I find that a lot of our residents have a lens of just looking at our council meetings and have a limited focus. That's the meeting. You have the mayor, you have the vice mayor, and they may not have the benefit of all the other things that a mayor does, knowing what a mayor does behind the scenes. And maybe that will get fleshed out in this kind of a proposal. It's not just running a meeting. And I think people need to be disabused of that. There's a lot of interaction with staff and other folks. So yeah, no, I'm definitely, thank you for asking. I'm supportive of this going forward for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've got a couple of comments, and then perhaps afterwards, Mr. Prestwich can share the screen with a model from another city. So I've seen this work well in places with a rotational system. Certainly the county has used a rotational system with the chair, and that rotates every year. I've seen it in other cities. One of the concerns is what did happen in the county this year, where you had a rotational system set up, and then there was a change that came. And my thought is, if the citizens vote something in and a system in, perhaps a rotational system, then any change would have to come from a vote of the people, so that would sort of protect the intention of the people for a rotational system, so that it couldn't be then changed. And Ethan, is now the time for me to see your hand and.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. You can finish your thought on the
Okay.
issue.
So I would want to make sure that what we're doing honors a system that we all agree on in terms of rotation, and making sure that we have that representation. Some of the things that Mayor or Vice Mayor Doring discussed or brought up in terms of what we want is representation for our full spectrum community. And so what are the different things that we can look at as a portfolio? Campaign reform, campaign finance reform. I also think that participation in sort of reform by local media can be part of that as well. What's an overall package so we get a system of steady representation? And I will also recognize Councilmember Hall in this sort of understanding that these 4-year terms may give a different kind of stability. One thing I've learned in looking on these boards that we serve on, NVTA, the Climate Action Committee, is there may be a value in having a vice chair that rotates into the chair, because as Vice Mayor Doring points out, there are lots of other parts of being a chair that are not just about running the one meeting. And it takes a little time to get up to speed. And so I think there's a value in looking at really defining what the rotational system would be, and at least presenting that when we present it to the public, so that there's an assurance that what they're voting for is what's going to be followed through. And that's where I think there was some disappointment with the county recently, where suddenly they decided to do something different, and that may not have honored, in a sense, the voters who had voted for certain people, knowing that there was a rotation. So with that, I'll go to Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I don't know that and I may have to do some additional research on this, but I don't know for certain that we could provide that confidence through the ballot measure. For a general law city, what the law requires is that in general, the council will appoint the mayor, but then the law does provide the option that the voters can vote to have a directly elected mayor. And so that's what happened in St. Helena in the 1970s. So then typically if you can have a ballot measure to reverse that. And then you would go back to what normal, the normal requirements of the government code, which is that the council would appoint the mayor. Now, a lot of different councils across the state have come up with procedures to decide how to appoint that mayor, and whether or not it would be, through a rotational system, or would it be through, the top vote getter in the last election, or any other number of ways that you can set that up. But that's done by the council by ordinance typically, or by resolution. And so the normal way of doing this would be that the citizens would vote on whether to directly elect the mayor or have the council appoint it, but it would be kind of an either or proposition. And then it would be the council's decision as to how that would be filled. And it could change from time to time. And that's probably I'm not familiar with that situation, but that's probably what happened in the case of the Board of Supervisors, is they decided to deviate from how they typically did it, which happens sometimes. If it's a council's direction, I can research that issue a bit more as to whether or not there could be some sort of ballot initiative that would set that procedure in place. That happens sometimes with citizens initiatives, but that would be very atypical, I would say.
Thank you. Well, I wonder, Mr. Prestwich, if you could share the screen, if you've found a model, and then, wondering how to.
Can you hear me
either
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll share my screen. This is the city of Oakley in California, and this is very typical of what you would see in cities with rotational mayors. I'm going to try to zoom in a little bit and center this for everyone. So this is an example of an annual appointment process that would take place at the end of the year. The mayor would essentially serve a one-year term on the calendar year. And with respect to the vice mayor, it really is expected in state law that a vice mayor would be appointed to serve in the event the mayor is not available to either manage the meeting or be available for the council. You can see here that in section C that neither the mayor or the vice mayor serves a term of office, but they serve at those capacities at the pleasure of the majority of the council. And the intent in this city is to establish a rotational process for members to become either vice mayor or both. Then the process continues. It asks the city clerk to manage a rotational schedule that will look at the most continuous time of service on the council, who is not for a person that has not previously served as vice mayor. And there's a process here by which, if there are two council members that have an equal amount of time on the council with continuous service, it will speak to the vote total at the prior election to be the deciding factor. And then it references how you start over again in section F. These are the final three sections, I believe.
Thank you for sharing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
so
that it demonstrates. Oh, go ahead.
Well, just one note that it did cover this at the beginning, and I see a little reference here at the end. Sometimes when the person next in rotation, it's their time, either they're not available because of the prior election, or they may choose not to serve in that role, and it would just skip over to the next individual.
Thank you. And so my thought is, can we dual track and looking at implementing a policy, a procedural policy that does its best to ensure that rotation can't just be changed upon a whim, that there's a reason that was established in the first place. And I do want to emphasize the importance of the vice mayor. It's a critical role in terms of a mayor being able to confer and to understand the workload, scheduling. It's not just an honorary position. There's a lot of work in it, and it does also prepare somebody for the role of chair. Being the vice chair helps prepare, understanding agendas, learning how things are set up, et cetera, being more focused. So I really kind of like this idea of the appointment of a vice mayor that would then lead into the mayorship. And that would ensure, to the best, possibility perhaps, that you're going to get this kind of continuity of understanding of what the issues are and where we are as a city on those issues. But I'll echo the vice mayor, I'm supportive of this going forward to the voters, but I do think having at the same time as we present something like this to the voters, what is the system for ensuring the rotation? And I don't know, Ethan, if you take another, bit of a look, if there's some support to see if that can be rolled into the ballot measure without causing too much problem. But if not, if we can dual track it as an ordinance so that we have both coming at once.
And I would just add, my observation of general law cities is that typically you would see that policy decision made after an election and not as part of the ballot process. So the language, I researched the process by which the government code, California government code, speaks to adjusting the process, and it requires a single question in front of the voters, which is the example provided in the staff report, but it doesn't speak at all to a policy. It simply refers to the fact that the council will make a decision among themselves. But my experience in different cities is that most cities with a appointed mayor simply adopt a policy that looks very similar to what you saw here with a few modifications, and that's how they move forward with decisions on how to appoint.
Okay, thank you. So is there any additional council comments, questions? I think you have direction from the council in terms of support, in terms of moving something forward.
Yes, I'll work with the city attorney. There are other implementing resolutions that are required for ballot measures, so we will need to outline those procedures as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other council comment here before we move forward? Seeing none, we'll now move to our next item. This is item 12.2, and this is the review of the fiscal year 2022-23 budget calendar. I'm seeing Councilmember Hardy.
Thank you. I would greatly benefit from a short break.
Okay, we're at 7:45. Should we come back and it's 10 minutes to, is that adequate?
More than enough. 5 would do
Okay.
it.
Okay, 5 minutes. So we'll come back at 7:51.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have folks getting back on here. We'll make sure everybody's with us. All right, where our council's coming back, seeing our city manager, our city clerk, and looking for our city attorney here, should be on momentarily. Okay, our council's back, our city manager's back, our finance director is back, and our city attorney's back. So appreciate it, everybody. We're back from our break here. We'll continue. We have a few more items this evening. So we'll now move to our item 12.2. This is the review of the fiscal year 2023 budget calendar. And this is Dr. Mitz, our Administrative Services Director.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. And what I wanted to do tonight is provide the City Council and the public a brief overview of I'm getting my screens in the right place. Can everybody see the budget calendar? Yes, okay. What I wanted to do is just provide a brief overview of what the fiscal year 23 budget calendar looks like. I won't hit on every single item, but kind of hit some of the highlights. So we did release our nonprofit grant applications. The posting was available on the website on January 14th. So nonprofits can go ahead and look over the guidelines and submit their applications to the city. Starting on January 28th, the Finance Division will issue the instructions, budget worksheets, and budget narratives to the departments in the preparation of their next upcoming budget. We are anticipating, again, it's probably going to be more of a status quo budget, knowing that we're still getting out of the effects of COVID, and then knowing that we do have some things that we have to take care of operationally, but we don't anticipate many changes. On February 8th, the nonprofit working group is designated. This is a working group of 2 council members that will work with city staff to review the nonprofit applications that are being submitted. Nonprofit applications are due on February 18th. On March 1st, the preliminary budget forecast and budget priorities discussion. It will be on or about it'll be sometime in March or April. We will work with council on putting together a workshop. On March 14th through the 25th, the city manager, myself, and also our assistant admin services director and department heads will meet to review their individual budgets and also verify budget requests aligned with city council goals and objectives. Sometime in either March or April is the 5-year CIP project list will be presented to Planning Commission, and that's per the City Council Municipal Code. On April 12th at a City Council meeting, the nonprofit summaries will be presented to City Council for consideration and award for the fiscal year 23 budget cycle. On April 26th at the City Council meeting, it's anticipated that we will be presenting the fiscal health diagnostic as well as the updated long-range financial forecast. On May 12th, which is a Thursday, we are looking to have our first half-day budget study session, and this is from 9 to noon. On May 24th, it's anticipated that the 5-year CIP will be presented to City Council for adoption. And on May 26th, if it's necessary, we are scheduling the second half-day budget study session for City Council. And then it is anticipated that we will bring the final final budget for City Council adoption on June 7th. And it is a good reminder that all budgets do need to be adopted by the 30th of June. So with that, it's just a receive and file tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Are there any questions, input here from council? I'm seeing Vice Mayor Doring.
Just curious, when is your vacation and Maddie's vacation in this schedule? After the budget, right?
We always schedule our vacations after the budget.
Okay.
No, we laugh. We actually do schedule it that one of us goes and the other goes. So we do it right in July typically.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other council input comments here? I'm just gonna say, oh, I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Okay, I'll wait for you, Mayor.
Well, I was just going to express my thanks for having this laid out this way. The more we sort of see and understand the process sort of in its timeline is very helpful. And, you're doing this, the last many years with this system now in place. It's gives us that sense of stability that we have a system that is not constantly changing, that we have a system that's really identified, and your work on that has just been great. So I just want to thank you for that. Because now once we see it, it's easier to understand and more clear for us and the community to understand how the process moves through. So I'm seeing Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Mitz. I was curious, we had significant changes approved to our budget after we completed our budget. I mean, just within a month or two following our budget. And I'm wondering if the long-range financial forecast, if there's any way without creating a huge amount of work to have a refreshed look at what that looks like today before we get too far into the budget process.
That I currently do not have the refresh on it. I would have to plug those numbers in there. We can definitely look at potentially bringing that back a little sooner to City Council if City Council does provide that direction. There are a lot of things that do feed into the long-range financial forecast. So without having more information on what departments are doing as far as their budget, it's a little hard to extrapolate it out. But we could certainly bring a refresh back to council if that's the council's direction.
Okay, well, maybe maybe I can follow up with you separately through email or something in the meantime.
Thank you. Any additional council comments here? I'm seeing City Manager Prestwich.
Sorry, I should have used the raise my hand feature.
I got your hand.
In terms of the long-range financial forecast, it may be helpful to have an earlier policy conversation about what configurations of forecasting, what inputs we would like, because some of these inputs are variables, and it would help our staff to understand. I mean, because we've looked at different ways. We've looked at forecasting in several different ways in prior years, and so I think it would be helpful for our staff to have a earlier policy conversation on a couple of different ways of looking at the data. And maybe that's an earlier engagement, and then we proceed with some of the work. But we've modeled the opening of a hotel or hotels in the past when we had an additional hotel that had an approved project development agreement. And so I think if we talk about the assumptions and the inputs, that might help our staff down the road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So seeing no other council comment at this point, I'm going to look to our city clerk to see if there's public input at this point, public comment.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back. We'll close public comment, bring it back to the council. And so this is a receive and file and informational for us. So that's very much appreciated. Any other council comment before we move on? Seeing none, we'll say thank you. And we will move then to our final item this evening, 12.3. This is our city council meeting 2022 council discussion. And this is our city clerk, Cindy Chapopoulos.
Yes. Good evening. I provided our annual calendar with staff report due date and council meeting, planning commission meetings noted. And typically we have gone dark the first meeting in July to allow for staff and council to plan for vacations. And then we typically take the second meeting, we go dark the second meeting in December to allow for holiday travel or whatnot. And so it's for your discussion to give staff direction.
Thank you. Any council comments to begin here as we look at the calendar? I'm seeing Councilmember Chateau.
Thank you so much. I see no reason to change. I think we move forward with this.
Very good. Other council comment at this point? Seeing none, then I will move to public comment, see if we have any public comment.
There are no raised hands.
Okay, so we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back now to the council. I'm supportive of that, of keeping the system that we have in place. I don't know if there's any additional council comment or make sure we have consensus on that. Okay.
Do we have consensus?
It looks like we do. So we'll move forward with that, with the calendar, and thank you for laying this out for us as well. So with that, that's our final item this evening. If there's no other council input here, I'll just wish everybody, as we move into the new year, positive things moving forward and staying focused on the COVID issues, staying focused on fire safety, and working together as a community on all that we do. So thank you very much. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Good night, all.
Hey.
Hi, thank you.